1045 The Team and 1045theteam.com. Goz here with you, and joining us on the phone lines, he writes for the New York Post. That is Mike Vacarro. And Mike, the news today, Phil Jackson, the New York Knicks part ways. Was this the Phil Jackson move, the first good step in the Knicks trying to rebuild this organization?
Well, it will be if they make the next couple of steps correctly. You know, I mean, it's been a real grind for them to try and find the right guy to lead this operation. Really, ever since Dave Checkett and them parted ways almost 20 years ago, it's been a real struggle trying to find somebody who knows what they're doing in running the day-to-day operation. So, I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, they thought that they were doing that when they hired Phil Jackson. They didn't hire him with the idea he was going to turn out to be the fiasco that he was. So it's kind of imperative right now for them to find the guy who's going to be the leader of this operation, because without that, you know, you can fire in as many people as you want, but what you want to do, the most important thing is to find the guy who's going to finally turn you in the right direction for a change.
We've been getting a lot of questions and tweets about this today, almost the timing of it. Why Phil Jackson released and parts way now after the draft? What was almost the final straw that got Phil Jackson out of New York?
Well, I mean, if we just go by logic, it sounds like it was either the notion that he was dangling Porzingis, or that he drafted the kid from France, and probably both of those now with the disapproval of the owner, or at least one or both. Is certainly enough to make a move, because it wasn't that long ago that James Dolan was firmly behind, some would say stubbornly behind Phil Jackson, despite however much testimony there might have been to the contrary. So. It's probably one of those two things, although I think you have to figure that if I'm Jim Dolan, you couldn't have liked the way that he attacked Carmelo Anthony all season long, and then turned his attention to your other good player, Kristaps Porzingis, and you had to ask yourself, what's the end game here? And it was certainly hard for me to figure out what Phil's motivation was for doing either thing. Certainly the Porzingis, because Porzingis is, by attacking Porzingis, he was really attacking his own legacy, because the one thing that Phil did well here was draft Porzingis. And so if you remove that from the equation, it kind of makes Phil's time here seem awfully empty and even more of an abject failure than it really is.
I agree with a lot of the things you're saying there. It's Mike Vacarro from the New York Post joining us here on Levack Goz on 1045 The Team. So, simple logic would say, now that Phil Jackson is gone, and you laid it out there, the struggle, the strained relationship between Phil and Carmelo and Porzingis, that it would seem more likely that Porzingis and Carmelo Anthony would stay in New York. Is that the case?
Certainly Porzingis. I mean, I think that this, I think there still has to be a little bit of a repairing of that relationship. Although it seemed that the prime source of Porzingis' unhappiness is now out of the picture. But it did seem that he was upset with the bigger picture of the way that the greater dysfunction that's kind of beset the Knicks for years. So we'll see how that affects Porzingis. Anthony's more of a curious figure. I mean, I think that without Phil here, it certainly makes staying in New York more appealing to him. I don't think he ever wanted to leave New York, and I think the only reason why he'd even, however much in his mind he'd come around to understanding that was inevitable, it was mostly just because he couldn't stand the daily circus with Phil. With that not here anymore, I mean, I think he might want to be here. I mean, I think he wanted to be here anyway, but I think it's more likely that he will be here. Is I guess the point I'm trying to make. And I suppose there's still a chance that he might be more amenable to allowing us to make a deal now that his arch enemy is out of the way. But my sense is that it's probably going to be a training camp that opens with Carmelo Anthony as a part of the Knicks.
Mike Vacarro from the New York Post joining us now, and now we look towards the future for the Knicks organization. Who takes the spot of Phil Jackson? I don't know if you've heard any candidates, but just to get it out of the way and maybe take the stress off Knicks fans, is Isaiah Thomas being mentioned at all for this?
I'd be very surprised. Everything I know about James Dolan, I've talked to James Dolan, he understands what a hot-button subject is. That is, he is good friends, remains close friends with Isaiah. He's obviously back working for him because he runs the Liberty in the MSG operation. But he was like I've seen enough to know never to say never. but I would be very surprised if he would do that because he understands what a hot button issue that is, especially coming on the heels of another hot button. I mean, to go back to Isaiah after kind of relieving Knicks of the Phil Jackson nightmare, I just don't think that's in his plans. That could turn out to be wrong. I'd be very surprised if Isaiah comes back.
Is the mindset now with the New York Knicks franchise, the organization overall, that, look, we went to a former player for the Knicks in Phil Jackson, it didn't work. We went for a former guy in the NBA in Isaiah Thomas, it didn't work. Are we going to see that trend go away and maybe we see a more sabermetric, savvy, 2017 Ivy League figure become the guy who runs the Knicks franchise from the president role?
I certainly think that's possible. But because the Knicks are the Knicks, I think they're going to go and survey, whether that's in Toronto, whether that's wherever you want to talk about, hot, accomplished, younger executives. And, you know, they're hard to pry away. You might have to try and do what you talked about and identify their own guy, you know, their own, excuse me, their own guru, you know, in the same way they did, you know, many years ago with Dave Checkers. Now, Checkers had already, you know, run the Jazz for a couple of years when they hired him. But, you know, the notion of running a professional sports team in Salt Lake City and one in New York City, obviously, I mean, it took a little bit of a vision to figure that would work out, and it did. That's what they need because the idea of a quick fix, maybe they have that guy under the roof already. I mean, I know Steve Mills is going to be the guy who, at least for the time being, runs the show. He's a bright guy who's well-respected among a lot of people in the league. I don't know if he necessarily has the gravitas that you want to have a guy who's going to run the New York Knicks basketball team. But that's the most important thing is identifying who that guy is because he's going to be the guy who determines whether or not you win this, you know, endless march through the darkness.
He is Mike Vacarro. He writes for the New York Post. Mike, appreciate your time, man. We'll talk again soon.
No problem. Good to be with you.